All right, Shalom, Shalom.
Shalom.
It's the brother Kadash.
It's the brother Kana.
Want to start off by giving our praises to Yahweh
Yahweh
Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem Kadash. This camp is going to be on, well, it's not this camp, but this little sit down is going to be on interracial marriages, you know. I was just scrolling through YouTube and I seen a video and the guys were saying interracial marriages is a sin. So that's what they were saying. So, you know, the spirit got on me, you know, it's just to make a video breaking it down that it's not. It's completely not. And hopefully through these precepts, we can give you the understanding. We're going to go straight to the law and do the monitoring, but then we're going to just paint you a picture that interracial marriages is not a sin by the Lord. I mean, just right off the top of our head, Moses had a wife from a different nation, right? It wasn't a sin. And King Solomon did go off because he had a lot of wives and they turned his heart away from the Lord. But it wasn't a sin for him having wives from other nations. That wasn't a sin. You know, he had a lot of wives. He wasn't sinning by taking all these women to be wives. He was the most knowledgeable man on earth that, except for Yahweh Shai himself, but if you have ears to hear, right? But he had all that wisdom and knowledge, and you think that he just took all these wives at once? No, he took all these wives over time, and he wasn't going off or sinning by taking wives of the other nations. His problem came when he allowed them to turn their heart away from the Lord. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to go straight to the law because pretty much that's all you need. That's the one hitter quitter right there to break this down, that we can marry women from the other nations, but it's just a way that you do it. Now, going back to King Solomon, I believe it talked about that, and I want to say it was First Kings, and it was saying don't give your seed into the other nations and stuff like that. The understanding of that is no, we're not going to give our seed or our sons and our women to the other nations to go follow them and follow their customs and marry into them. You see what I'm saying? That would make them Gentiles going into 1 Corinthians chapter 12. But we can take the woman and you're almost like converting them. And we're going to read it. You're almost like converting them, but they're not Israelites. They don't have the promise, right, by seed. But you're bringing them into what we have to follow what we have, and then you could take them to be wives. So that's the way you do it. Just because it say don't give our seed into those other nations, right? It's not saying that we can't take those other nations' women to be wives. But no, we're not going to give our seed. We're not going to give our daughters to Edomites to become their husbands and stuff like that. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 12, I don't see how you get around this. This is clear cut. This is in the law. The law that the Lord gave to Moses and the Israelites is right here. Let's go.
Deuteronomy 21.
Yep.
Deuteronomy 21, verse 10. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thy hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife.
Mm-hmm.
Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails.
Right. So when we go into our enemies, now our enemies, you could break that down in like Psalms 83. So our enemies there's only two ways to look at this law. One way is you could say the enemies is just other Israelites. And then you could say, look, you can't have interracial marriages. You only can marry Israel with Israel. But that would be incorrect because this is a law that's given to the whole Israel. You see what I'm saying? So who are the enemies? The enemies would be the other nations. I'll tell you. I'll show you right here. If I could get to it. This is Psalms 83. This will be our enemy. The Bible tells you who our enemies is. And we know that Esau, Edom is our number one enemy, you know. But Psalms 83 verse 1. Keep not thy silence, O God. Hold not thy peace and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies, right, make the atonement, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head, and have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites, the Moabites, the Haggernes, Gabal, Ammon, Amalek, the Philistines, and the inhabitants of Tyre. So it's in Ashur, and it keeps going. So these are our enemies, right? So when it says in Deuteronomy 21, you go to war against the enemies, go back to that point right there, and then keep going. Probably the first verse.
Yeah. Verse 10. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thy hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife.
To be a wife. So we won a war against our enemies. We took them captive. We took them down. And then amongst a woman, these is a different nation. Like, just imagine, like an Edomite nation. We went to war with them, right? Which is going to happen. And we see one of their women, right? Keep going.
Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails. And she shall put the remnant of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thy house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband.
So what does it mean go into her? I mean, you're going to go in, you're going to pop her. You know what I mean? And then you're going to become her husband. So, I mean, is interracial marriage is a sin? Well, technically, nah, because it just said in Deuteronomy 21. You know, you take them captive. If she had a husband and her husband got killed in war, so now she became a widow, and then you could take her back to your house. There's a certain way you have to do it, but she's in captivity. We ain't taking ourselves into captivity, man. So this is talking about the other nations, and it said, look, you become her husband. Keep going.
And she shall be thy wife, and it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will, but thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her.
Right, so the difference between her and a Hebrew woman that you take as a wife, you can't let her go except for like adultery or fornication. But with this woman, you can let her go whenever you want to, whenever you feel like it. But you can't sell her because she still was your wife. But at the same time, we're going to have the other nations as wives. We're going to have them as concubines in the kingdom. Because even when you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 30, that was a curse that was put on us. Going back to Deuteronomy 28, now going back to Deuteronomy chapter 30, it says the curses that was put on us is going to be put on our enemies. So the same way during slavery, they was popping our woman. They took us in slavery. They was taking our woman, getting them pregnant, sending them back to the villages where we was at the slave quarters, and they had come back pregnant by master. They're going to go through those same curses. So who's going to put them through those curses? The Israelites. We're going to take them in captivity, and then we're going to pop their women too. So yes, I mean, all signs and all roads lead to us being able to deal with women from different nations. It's just the way you do it. You can't deal with them and let them take your heart away from the Lord. If she's trying to do that, then you got to get rid of her. You see what I'm saying? Just like what the whole story with King Solomon. Now, this is Zechariah 14. But the understanding is that the Israelites are going to go to war with all the other nations. I'm not going to get it, but in Daniel chapter 7, it says, the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom of heaven. So, and then in Obadiah 1, it says that the house of Israel, house of Judah, or roughly paraphrasing, is going to be a fire and a flame, and the house of Esau will stumble. So the Israelites are going to stand up and they're going to fight, and then the elect is going to get that power, and they're going to come back and put all the other nations into captivity. You read about that in Psalms, 49? Psalms 149, you read about that, us binding their kings and stuff like that. So when we do that, just like it goes back to the law in Deuteronomy 21, we're going to be able to take the woman that we desire, that we see amongst the captives, we're going to be able to take them for wives. And it told you how we're going to do it, just like in Deuteronomy 21. So that's a cut right there for the whole interracial marriage is a sin. It's not. I get it. Brothers want to say, let's just stay to ourselves and not deal with the other. I get it. But we got to go off the law, statutes, and commandments, because you can't tell who's really an Israelite for the most part unless you have spiritual discernment. So a woman could come looking like a Italian, but she could really be an Israelite. You see what I'm saying? So you kind of got to go off the spirit at the same time. Now, remember I said that with King Solomon, he went off because he let his wives turn his heart away from the Lord. But how is that going to be possible when all nations are going to be in captivity under the Israelites and they're all going to have to follow our law? So how can you get with a woman of another nation and she turn your heart away from the Lord when in the kingdom, all these nations are going to have to follow our law, statutes, and commandments anyways? So where is she going to be able to turn your heart away from when she's going to have to follow the law, statutes, commandments? The same way in Esau kingdom, we have to follow their laws. The only reason why you're out on the highways and byways teaching, because Esau has his laws set up that allow you to go out on the highways and byways and teach. Esau could come out tomorrow and say nobody else teach on the highways and byways, and that's going to be the famine of the word. None of us is going to be out on the highways and byways. Yeah. So the same way we have, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and in the kingdom we gonna be made perfect, so ain't gonna be no such thing as going off.
Yeah.
So it ain't gonna be no such thing as another woman coming in and changing our hearts and making us follow their customs or nothing like that. So it's not gonna be possible in the kingdom.
It's not gonna be possible. So we're gonna have these other women as concubines, as wives, of the other nations. This is Zechariah 14. I want to get straight to the point. Verse 14 is always good. It says, "And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance." So we're going to take the wealth of all these other nations. We're going to take the gold, the silver, and there's precepts that speak about that. Matter of fact, get that right there since we're on verse 14.
What?
Isaiah
60?
Yeah, get Isaiah chapter 60. Because it says, "Look, and Judah shall also fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance." So we're going to take all their wealth. But true wealth, like the Apostle Paul always say, true wealth is slaves. So we're going to take them too, not just the money, the gold and everything, but we're going to take slaves too. You can read them. I'm not going to get it, but you can read about that in Amos chapter 9, starting at verse 11 and verse 12. You can read about that in Isaiah 14, starting at verse 1, 2, and 3. We're going to take captives who we were captives of. You know what I mean? So when we take these other nations into slavery, going back to the law, Deuteronomy 21, there's certain things we could do. If we see a fine woman or a desirable woman, we could take her to be a wife of the other nations. So you can't say interracial marriage is a sin. It don't say that, You got that?
Yep.
Yeah, go on that.
Isaiah 60, verse 9. "Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of the Lord thy God, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he hath glorified thee."
That's spiritual. What did it just say in Zechariah 14? It says we're going to take all the gold. So it's saying, look, our sons, and when we get in the kingdom, you're going to have the elect there, and then you're going to have the rest of the Israelites, and then you're going to have a thing called reincarnation, regeneration. The Israelites, that the 2/3 that died are going to be reborn back in the kingdom. And then you're going to have our sons and our daughters coming from far. The elect is going to come from Mystery Babylon, America. But there's going to be Israelites that's going to still make it outside of America. And they're going to come back to the land. They're going to join us. You see what I'm saying? So, and then the Lord said He's going to send the angels to gather us from wherever we be scattered. That's in Matthew 24, and that's in Deuteronomy 30. So there's going to be the Israelites coming back, and we're going to come back with all the gold and the silver. It's same thing happened in Egypt when, during the first Exodus. When the Lord saved us out of that place, we took all the gold and all the silver out of Egypt. That's how they were able to make the golden calf and everything, because they had that gold and stuff like that when they went out. So they took the wealth of everything when they went out. Keep going.
Verse 10. "And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in the wrath I smote thee, but in the favor have I had mercy on thee." Verse 11. "Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought."
Right, so it's just showing you captivity. They're going to be in captivity and subjection to the Israelites. We're going to have our gates open, but our gates are open for a special reason. Keep going.
Verse 12. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee."
Right there. Hold it right there. That's cool. So it's saying that, look, they're going to be in captivity. They're going to have to serve us. If they don't want to serve us, they're going to perish. So it's breaking down the same thing Deuteronomy 21 said. When you take them captive, if you see a woman that's among them, you could take her to be a wife. It's just that simple. Now, back in Zechariah 14, and I'm going to jump down straight to the point. Verse 16, "And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations," right, "which came up against Jerusalem should even go up from year to year to worship the King and the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." Why? Because they're going to have to follow our law, statutes, and commandments. And they're going to be punished if they don't. And Did the Lord say we're going to be a nation of kings and priests? So we're a nation of priests. Jeremiah 31, starting at verse 31, the new covenant says that we're not going to have to teach each other no more because we're going to be made perfect. So who are we going to be priests to? Who are we going to teach? We're going to have to teach the other nations. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to have control over the world. We're going to rule the world, and we're going to teach these other nations how to live on the earth by the law, statutes, and commandments. So we're going to implement our law, statutes, and commandments around the whole earth. Yeah. Everybody's going to be in subjection to them.
We're going to govern the rest of the world.
Right. Now, just because they have to follow our law, statutes, commandments don't mean they're going to be saved or have the blessing of the kingdom or the rulership. The same way we have to follow Esau's law, statutes, and commandments, right? Mm-hmm. But that don't mean that we rule America. That don't mean that we're the ruling class and have to say we're still slaves. We're still in captivity, even though we have to follow their laws. You see what I'm saying? So you can't say, well, look, they're worshiping the king and they follow the Feast of Tabernacles. That means that they're going to become Israelites. No. It don't mean that. You gotta. Most of us grew up following Christmas, but you can't go if the street say 70 miles per hour. You could go 80, but if you get caught, you're gonna get punished. You see what I'm saying? So we have to follow their laws. They're gonna have to follow our laws, and our laws happen to be the law, statutes, and commandments. It says, but see, the difference is, and this is the difference. They can be punished. We're gonna be perfect, so we're not gonna be punished in the kingdom. It says, and it shall be that whoso would not come up of all the families of the earth into Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them should be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there should be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen, the Israelites. No, he said the heathen that come not up to the Feast of Tabernacles. So they going to still be plagued by the Lord. They going to have the curses on them because the curses going to get switched off us and put on them. And a part of those curses was them having our woman in their hands to do whatever they want to do. And we had no might in our hands to stop it. It says in Deuteronomy 28, here, let me jump to it since I keep mentioning it. Because I want to prove the point. The curse of them having our woman, they going to have that same curse on them. Of us, we going to have their woman. This is Deuteronomy 28. I want to say just straight to the point. Verse 30. This is very grievous, man. It says, thou should betroth a wife. Thou should what? Betroth a wife. It says, and another man shall lie with her. That happened in slavery. So this is Deuteronomy 28, starting at verse 30. So if they have to drink of the same cup we drunk of, but double, going to Jeremiah 49, then the same way they were able to lay with our wives, then we're going to lay with theirs. But we're going to do it in a holy way because we're just going to take their woman before they're even married or betrothed to an Edomite man. So we're going to take them and we're going to be at an interracial marriage, so-called. It says, thou shalt build a house and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Thy oxen shall be slain before thy eyes and thou shalt eat thereof. Thy ass shall be violently taken away from thee, thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given into thy enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters should be given into another people. And what was happening when our daughters was given into another people? They was hooking them up with their sons. They was popping them, taking them to be wives. It says, and thy eyes shall look and fell with longing for them all day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. We had no might in our hand. We couldn't stop it. There ain't nothing we could do about it. If you was a slave during the time of slavery, which we were because we were reincarnated, and your wife master took your wife and popped her, or took your daughter as soon as she hit like 16, 14, because they was getting them young, and popped her, ain't nothing you could do. You could yell, you could scream, you could try to fight, they'd whip you, they'd break you, and then they'd send your wife to another plantation and split y'all up, and there was nothing you could do about it. So it's going to be the same thing with Esau. He's going to have to go through the same cup. So yeah, we're going to be taking their wives and splitting them up and taking their wives and shipping them across some other place. And the brother may take, and he never see them again. Yeah, we're going to be taking their daughters. I mean, that's one of the promises. This is the last precept in Revelations 21. Yeah, you say, well, how can you take their wives? That's adultery, right? We're going to put them to death. When you put them to death, like it just said in Deuteronomy 21, when you go to war, right? If it was a woman that was married, her husband got killed in a war, then you took the nation as captivity, then you could take the woman to be a wife, because then she's going to be a widow. This is Revelations 21, straight to the point. verse 25. It says, "And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, or there should be no night therein." So our gates are going to be open. Going back to Isaiah 60, it tells you why our gates are going to be open. And they should bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it, right? And who is the glory and the honor? Different artifacts, paintings, gold, silver, anything of glory and honor these other nations got. They're going to be bringing it to our gates to give it to us, and that includes women. The Moabites might have a beautiful Moabite woman, and she grew up and she was just so beautiful, and the father might bring her to the gates to give her to Israelite man to be a wife. Why? Because that's enormous wealth for him and his family. If he could get his daughter, his beautiful daughter, and he could get an Israelite man to take her, even though they're going to be in captivity, they might have a lighter captivity because now that's your wife and that's your wife's family. You see what I'm saying? She's going to be able to, get some of the good things of being a wife to an Israelite man. And the Israelite men are going to be the most sought after and desired man on the earth because we're going to have the power. Women follow power. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to have the power. So all the women, the Moabite woman, the Ishmaelite woman, the Edomite woman, they're all going to want a Hebrew Israelite man because we're going to have the power in the kingdom. You see what I'm saying? So, and the same thing with their families. Fathers are going to be bringing their daughters, their beautiful daughters, to our gates to try to offer them up to get married to a Hebrew Israelite man. So how can you say interracial marriage is a sin? When we just pulled many precepts all throughout the whole Bible, breaking it down that we're going to take these other nations' women to be wives and concubines. So hopefully this has been edifying. With that, I'm going to say salvation to the elect. Shalom.
Shalom.